Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming in today. We really appreciate your time. I'd, as always, like to start with an acknowledgement of country. State Library Victoria acknowledges the traditional lands of all the Victorian Aboriginal clans and their cultural practices and knowledge systems. We recognise that our collections hold traditional cultural knowledge belonging to Indigenous communities in Victoria and around the country. We work closely with these communities to protect the integrity of this information gathered from their ancestors in the colonial period. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, who have handed down these systems of practice to each new generation for millennia. I know we have a packed session coming up, but I'll just run you through a few community announcements and events. So next month is all about customer discovery and validation. So on the 2nd of April, we've got the Breakfast Club that's titled Customer Discovery and Validation, a practical framework for choosing your ideal customer strategically and validating demand. This will be presented by Jake Spillane, founder of Antigrav. Antigrav specializes in UX design and research to support organizations of any size to understand their customer needs and goals before building meaningful and viable customer experiences. On April 4th, so the Saturday just after the members' breakfast, we have the AI building session with MLAI. So that's an opportunity to come in and work with a group of AI engineers, developers, experts, to be more informed, to ask what products work for you, and if you're developing AI products, then develop it with people that can support you. We also have launched the StartSpace Challenge. The StartSpace Challenge is the first of its kind challenge by State Library Victoria. The program invites up to 5 early stage startup teams, including solo founders, newly formed teams, and existing startups, to work closely with State Library Victoria subject matter experts to co-create and validate a minimum viable product that responds to a real library challenge. Through the program, selected teams will have the opportunity to present their MVP to State Library Victoria executives and representatives from the Public Library Network, which is a network of around 200 public libraries in Victoria. Where there is strong alignment, there's also the opportunity to land State Library Victoria as your first client, as your first paid client, and scale across public libraries in Victoria. The challenge statement is, just to give you an idea, how might we reimagine library experiences for young people aged 12 to 18 so they feel as captivating, interactive, and immersive as the digital worlds that they inhabit, while strengthening meaningful, curriculum-aligned learning? So if that resonates with you, we've got a few QR codes across the space. Otherwise, you can find the information on the website. The deadline to apply is March 29th. Okay, intro to session. This session is designed to really bring real-life experience and insights by experienced founders and leaders. Founders often navigate uncertain and uncharted territories. The work that actually moves the needle, however, needs to be strategic, structural, relational, and creative. So introducing our esteemed panel today, it's so great to have all three of you in the space. Amelia Gofrani. So Amelia is an investor, entrepreneur, and founder of Compass Point Advisory, a Melbourne-based firm that helps small and medium-sized businesses scale, modernize, and grow in the age of AI. Today, she works closely with founders and SME leaders to bring enterprise-level strategy, systems, and innovation into growing businesses so they can compete and thrive in a rapidly changing world. Before launching her own company, Amelia spent more than 2 decades in senior consulting and leadership roles with global organizations, including IBM, DXC Technology, Fujitsu, and Bupa, where she led large transformation programs and advised organizations on strategy, growth, and innovation. She's passionate about helping entrepreneurs unlock their potential and build resilient, high-performing companies. Outside of work, Amelia loves traveling and exploring new cultures, something that reflects her curiosity about the world and the people building businesses within it. So a round of applause for Amelia, please. And next we have Eleanor Bellew, or Elle. Elle is a Melbourne-based brand strategist, content creator, and motorsports presenter. As co-host of the F1 podcast Paddock 43, she brings together her passion for racing with a strong background in marketing, digital content, and storytelling. Having built her career across leading brands, she now works independently as a consultant and strategic advisor, helping businesses strengthen their brands, connect with audiences, and grow with more clarity. Elle is also the co-founder of Principle the Label, a brand reimagining Formula One race day fashion through a fresh lifestyle lens. Please help me welcome Elle. And last but not least, we have Dr. Rawini. Dr. Rawini Kurai is a neuroscientist with over 15 years of experience in molecular genetics and brain research. She's the founder and CEO of Neurogen, a biotech and neurotech company developing advanced biological brain implants to treat diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. She also founded the Nova Intelligence Network, and we've got the co-founder in the room with us today. Hello. It's a global initiative with the aim of advancing biological intelligence in the age of artificial intelligence. So ideally, ultimately, we win the race. Dr. Kurai is a research fellow at Deakin Uni and holds honorary research positions at the University of Melbourne, Royal Melbourne Hospital, and IRD Sri Lanka, affiliated with King's College London. She's a recipient of the Victorian International Education Awards Entrepreneur of the Year 2025, and she actively mentors emerging scientists and entrepreneurs in STEM. Please help me welcome Rawini. On the tables, everywhere in the room, you'll see some QR codes to fill the feedback form. So at the end of the session, we would really appreciate you taking a minute to give us your feedback. It does make a difference, and we do read them, and we do iterate and improve as we go. So please take a minute at the end of the session. But to kick off with a question, so I guess I provided some introduction of you, but I'd love you to introduce yourself in 1 or 2 minutes, just a bit more about you. Would you like to start, Amelia?
Yeah, thanks to the StartSpace team for inviting me today to share my story. Does it? Seems like it's okay. I can hear the echo. So, as Amir said, I worked for 20 plus years in senior leadership roles in consulting, and particularly the last 3 or 4 years, I just felt like corporate was changing a lot. Obviously, the impact of AI, but I wanted to help the small medium enterprise, and I wanted to. A lot of the small medium enterprise, 70% of the Australian companies are made by this cohort of businesses, but the competition against the big players like the Amazons, the Googles, and other big organizations is quite high. They don't have the access to the frameworks or tools that these players have. So, it didn't sit right with me. So for me, I was like, I need to change. I need to help them. So last year I left corporate and I started Compass Point Advisory, particularly pivoted to help the small medium enterprise market. Also founders and entrepreneurs to help them because I believe in more competition. I believe in more sustainable environments. And yeah, that was my story as to why I left.
Thank you. And Elle?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. So my story is I've never done anything conventional in my life. I wasn't someone that wanted to sit at university for 3 years in a row. I did it over 8 years online because I believed in working, and I always struggled just working for the one person. So since I've been 19 and working full time, I always had jobs on the side, lots of different jobs. It's taken me a long time to work out what I wanted to do, but naturally everything has led to a portfolio career for me. So I'm a photographer first and foremost, a marketing consultant where I have my retainer clients, and they all seem to be in the automotive space at the moment, which is very fitting because then on the other side, I'm an automotive presenter and writer. I have my F1 podcast. And to add into the mix, I thought in 2024, I'll start an apparel label because I wasn't busy enough. So I've been running that since 2024 with another co-founder, and she also works full time. So my life is about balance and trying to help other people as well achieve that sort of balance and be really happy in what they're doing. I'm a strong believer in it shouldn't be fine. If it's not an absolute yes right away, then you're not doing the job for you. I've had many opportunities in my life and I take it all so seriously and always make sure I'm saying yes to make sure I'm doing what I love. And I'm excited to be here and talk more about it.
Thank you. Rawini.
Thanks everyone, and thanks Amira and StartSpace team for having me. It's always good to come back to this place. So I'm Ravini and I'm a neuroscientist by profession. I've I'm looking into more genetic side of the brain and see how they work in normal conditions and intelligence, learning, and memory pathways, and how they change in diseases, and how can we change them or mitigate any diseases to help people. So yeah, I've got my biotech startup, Neurogen, where we develop a brain implant. Instead of a silicon brain implant, we're trying to make it biological, like make of your own brain cells, so that it works better for you and it's more accepted. And that's focused towards the therapeutics. And on the other hand, we have the Nova Intelligence Network. So that's a community that we're building to, I guess, intelligence as a commodity. So it's still under development. You can talk to Vic as well. So what we try to do is to find a way where we can meet the artificial intelligence, the human intelligence together to make the future better. And like Elle said, we don't have enough work. So we always try to get more. And one of my new project is a Career Venture Foundry that's back in Sri Lanka. I'm originally from Sri Lanka, so this is my way of giving back to Sri Lanka, where I would identify any new ventures and new innovations in universities and private innovators, and help them connect to global investors and communities like this to build into a successful patient outcomes in healthcare industry.
Thank you, Rowini. Now moving into maybe talking about what actually works or has worked for you as early stage founders. Was there a decision about yourself or a discovery moment that changed the trajectory of your venture or career?
I guess I wanted to be a scientist, and I had the academic research mindset from a very long time, and that's why I worked towards my PhD. And during my PhD, I realized that that wasn't enough for me. I needed to make a better, more tangible patient outcome, and that's why I've decided to have a startup and move in that direction. So that was a major change, because the advice I got was, once you're in the industry, once you're in the entrepreneurship, there's no going back. You can't go back to research, you can't go back to being an academic. But somehow I tend to manage. I guess I'm doing all right. But what happened was, during my PhD, I took on a side project, and there I built this small ball of cells that ultimately came out as a brain implant. And I've always had this problem in my head that of all the diseases, brain diseases does not have an option. Like, even for a heart disease, you can still get a transplant, but you can never get a brain transplant, or there's no choice. So that problem was there in my mind. And when I saw this brain implant in my hand, this ball of cells, I realized this is what I've been looking for. It's like, have you noticed, like when you're thinking of a red car, you tend to see more red cars in the road. So that's similar experience, where you had that problem in your brain, and then suddenly when you have the opportunity, you take it, and then you jump on board, fully on board, and no regrets, no turning backs. You're moving ahead, and so far it's going well for me.
Thank you. And Elle, did you have like was there a decision made, or was it always just yourself, or was there like a pivot point?
I mean, I'm pretty strong-willed, so I don't take no very lightly. So I was very determined to do everything that I wanted to do. I mean, look up my last name, you might recognize it. Some people do, some people don't. But because of that, a lot of people just assumed things about me. So I was always wanting to separate myself from that and really make my own way and my own path. And I didn't want to take no for an answer. So it simply came down to following my passions and building them all together and creating the life that I wanted to feel like I was proud of, and that was mine. And I'm very proud to like sit here at 32 and say I am on that path as well.
Yeah, and for context, your family is in politics, right? But you
Yes.
was in politics, so yeah, you kind of wanted to establish yourself
I
and
wouldn't be a
craft
very
your
good
own.
politician, so don't ask me
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
about that.
yeah. Thank you. And yeah, Amelia, I know that not long ago, I think you made that decision to pivot, and you mentioned that it comes from that place of wanting to support. Was there anything maybe personal that
There wasn't
um,
like a decisive moment.
mm,
It was always there. But I think when you're in corporate, you just get comfortable, you know. And one of my colleagues used to say, you get the sugar hit from the monthly salaries.
mm,
As an entrepreneur and founder, you don't have that. So it is like a roller coaster all the time. And so I always say to young people, it's easier to become an entrepreneur when you're young because you take a lot more risks. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't. So and I think for females as well, a lot of the times you want things to be perfect, but you need to take that risk. And at one point I was like, this is it. So that happened for me last year when I was like, okay, I'm not going back. I've made a decision. You get a lot of temptations, especially when yeah, you get lured into like different things and different projects. But yeah, no, it's what you finally make that decision, and it's great.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask you. So I'll be targeting some questions to some speakers, but more than welcome for anyone to step in and share their thoughts. But from your experience, Amelia, what is something early stage founders underestimate or overestimate?
Someone once said to me, we tend to overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 3 years. And I found that to be 100% true. Like, because you become, especially as a solopreneur initially, you try and do everything. I had a team. I was managing a team of 80 people across Australia and New Zealand. I had marketers, finance people, you know, specialists in every organization. So when you go on your own, you're doing everything. And yeah, it's a very different mindset. You need to change that, and it takes a lot of work. And so you really overestimate a lot of things that you can achieve. Obviously, I pivoted from corporate to small medium, so I need to learn a whole lot of things little things like how to use Zero. I didn't have to worry about things like that. I'm sure you all know about that, but those kind of little things, you overestimate how long, and just be patient and waiting for your accountant, your lawyer, and this and that to happen. So these are very practical things. But I know how much you can achieve over 3 years, and that's when we underachieve.
So
Underestimate, I mean.
having long term vision, but also just a strategic mindset in general, which we'll get to a bit
Yes.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rowena, I'd also like to ask you this question. So, what is something early stage founders overestimate or underestimate?
I think I want to reflect Amelia as well, because we tend to overestimate the complexity of it, and we try to dive too deep, but sometimes it's not that complex. We just need to chunk it down into small pieces and digest it slowly so that you can achieve your milestones step by step rather than looking in that big picture and panicking, especially in a long process like, you know, in deep tech, biotech, we're looking at 20 years ahead before even get any revenue. So in that journey, it can overwhelm, but sometimes when you break it down to small pieces, it's easy to digest. And at the same time, the cost. It's always the cost. You need to budget at least 3 times what you expect to have, because that's how much it's going to cost.
As in financial, but
Financial.
also time, resources, etc. Or more
Time,
specifically?
resources as well, but mostly finances, because that's one of the biggest parts that can either strengthen your startup or it can kill your startup. And we need to keep an eye out for cash flow and expenses, and always you make your budget, triple it.
Yeah.
Simply.
Okay. With that, founders maybe thinking a bit too big or going very deep into rabbit holes and over complexifying or complicating things. How do you draw the boundaries for that? When do you stop kind of breaking things down ultimately into maybe less useful or meaningful bits?
It's a very personal thing, I think, Amir, because everybody's journey is different. even if you look at startups who are building very similar products, their personal journeys are very different. And it's the story is in founder's head. So you know where you want to be in 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, in the next month, next 2 months, and you know your capacity. As a founder, it's very important to have that understanding, and it needs to be very realistic as well. You know the budget you have, you know the people you work with, you know their strengths and weaknesses, and you know your strengths and weaknesses, and very open about it, and then break it down to the way you're comfortable. It's okay, I think, to stretch it a little bit too far. It's okay to have very tough deadlines so that we'll push ourselves as well. That's what something I do as well. Like if something takes about 6 months to achieve, I usually set the deadline to 3 months. Okay, you gotta finish it in 3 months, but I won't finish it in 3 months. I might take 4 months, but I will definitely finish it less than 6 months. So it's okay to have tough boundaries, but be realistic.
And that's also, I'm guessing, dependent on your discipline or the kind of work that you're doing, because with brain implants, technology, R&D, etc., there could be more contingencies or just, more barriers along the way, but also like some bumps and hiccups. So that's also a factor. When we spoke, you did tell me about also like the lifestyle that you lead and that headspace that you create in your life. Do you want to talk a bit on that? What works for you in that sense?
Yes, the headspace. Being a neuroscientist kind of helped as well to manage the stress.
If you have any tips, by the way, please throw them at us.
Well, what I do is I'm very cautious about what my sensory inputs are. And that includes what I see, what I hear, and who I talk to, who I interact with. I might come across as a rude person sometimes or insensitive, but that's not what I mean. I'm very guarded about what my environment is, and that includes television. I don't watch TV, and I do have social media, but that's only for PR purposes to maintain a social profile. I don't have TikTok or I don't use Instagram. I keep scrolling off. Even if someone's scrolling next to me, I just block myself off because I don't want to hear. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just it's not for me.
Yeah.
And when I'm away from them, I have no clue what's going on in the rest of the world. It's my partner's job to know the politics and the war is happening. He'd say, okay, go and fill your car with petrol because there's a crisis.
You have like daily 15-minute debriefs or something about the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have that understanding as well. And he knows that I need my headspace so that when I have that space, I have space to store my information and critically analyze and improve my creativity. I don't know, that's how my brain works.
Yeah, so it's really about curating the environment that really fosters your discipline, structural thinking, and getting things done, as opposed to like, doom scrolling or being too less focused, or, a scattered brain or
yeah, I think as a
attention.
founder, it's very important that you might want to stay away from all that distractions, because if it is not relevant to your purpose, why? I mean, again, a neuroscientist information, every information that you remember is in the expense of something you already know. And every time when you learn something new, even if it is completely rubbish, you have to break down an already existing pathway, which could be useful. And the paradox is that once you've forgotten that information, you don't even know what you've forgotten because you've forgotten it. So it's very important what you learn, and it's very important what you preserve. It's very important to keep that head clear.
Great, thank you.
My whole life is sensory overload.
I was getting to now, Elle, actually, on that. So you manage different companies, ventures, and disciplines. How do you do it? Do you have systems in place? Are there any specific tools you use to support you? How do you kind of break yourself down and make it
Social
work?
media.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like this is complete opposite chat. But I would strive also, I do want that in my life as well, because it is sensory overload. I mean, if you've ever been, has anyone been to an F1 before? You know how quick they are. You can't have a conversation. I mean, any motorsport really. And then everything's going quickly. There's crowds everywhere. It is complete sensory overload, especially today when consumer experience is so high. For me, managing so many different things, and say when I'm at a motorsport event such as the F1, time blocking is my best friend. It goes along with my routine as well. So to put that in an example, a normal week, when there's no big event on, I will always still get up before 7 a.m. and walk the dogs. It's, you know, my time just to listen to an audiobook. I don't listen to podcasts in the morning. It's just about me and listening to Fourth Wing or something like that. And then everything is time blocked throughout the day. So exercise and fresh air is so important to me to maintain what I'm doing, and then blocking out where those spaces are. But when it comes to, say, like a week at the F1 where I'm working 18-hour days, I might be sleeping 3 hours from a night from Monday to Sunday. I'm very aware how exhausted I am, but I just don't engage in things like drinking or having conversations that I feel like may not benefit me in any way. You know, it's full switch on mode, and knowing that as soon as I stop and that week is over, is rewarding myself with a break. Even if it's, you know, half a day or a day at home, just relaxing with dogs as well, making sure I get outside and do some exercise. I think it's so easy when you're working for yourself. And, you know, like myself, I've got lots of different things on, and I imagine just having one startup to not take a break. I recently was consulting a few years ago for a tech startup, and the two founders did not stop. They wouldn't even take 5 minutes for lunch. And I had to sit them down and I was like, guys, you're going to burn out. Like, I know that I've just come in here to be your marketing consultant, but this isn't healthy. And I know it feels good, and you're locked in, and you have that one goal, and that's great. Keep it. But 5 minutes to go outside, you know, it's true what they say, touch some grass, put your feet on the ground, look up at the sky, and don't look directly in the sun, but open up your eyes, and let that natural light come in. It makes a huge difference. But also, I have times where I also block in to look at social media and be inspired as well in my industry. I mean, I have to be online all the time. It's my portfolio for me. So I do have times where I'm phone's here and it's really bad, and I'm just locked into that. But yeah, making sure that you have time for yourself as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like even if there's a lot of buzz and maybe chaos, so it's really busy around you, you still kind of are walking in with like a headspace, with purpose, knowing what you want and what you seek. So even amidst all the noise, there's that headspace, or really that you spoke about. Very quickly on that, how important or relevant is the role of personal branding for you or with founders in general? And is that something that you actively pursue, or just something that emerged?
This is something that I've had a lot of issues with recently. I've been around the social media PR space since 2010, before, you know, social media was really a thing beyond Facebook and MySpace. And having lots of different brands and different experiences, I always was jealous of those founders that I would see online showcasing this wonderful lifestyle. And I thought, do I need to be doing that? Is that, you know, what's going to prop up my brands? Is that what's going to prop up Principle the Label, which is my F1 inspired apparel brand? And I worked out that that just wasn't for me, because that also wasn't the reality. I was comparing myself to these founders that were, you know, moving to New York and living in these luxury spaces and, you know, buying all these products and setting up these startups. But really, for me, working for myself in small business, I'm at home on the couch. You know, that's my reality. No one needs to see that every day. So as a founder, I didn't want to have a founder profile. So I use my social media to showcase really just who I am as a person. I do think it's really important. And I say to young girls all the time wanting to get into the automotive and motorsport space, I'm like, whatever it is, show what you've got. You know, if you want to be in PR, jump on there and analyze something and just put a video up. It always just takes that one person to see something. So I do think it's a really important thing to maintain. And like you said, you know, you maintain it for public relation purpose. I 100% support that. But sometimes, you know, don't get caught up in what other people are doing. It's very easy to do that.
Thank you. Amelia, on that, what do you see with early stage founders? Because I know for a fact that many founders are somewhere between, oh, should I put myself out there or focus more on the product? Do I want to have, like a LinkedIn, more influencer presence? Or what's the role, and how do you see that in terms of like the success of founders, or the focus, or the viability of their business, that almost personal brand, the founder behind the business?
So in my case, I had a pretty good brand in LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is a very corporate social media platform. But because when I pivoted to the SME space, and also as an investor, as I'm acquiring businesses, small medium owners are not on LinkedIn. Most of them are on Instagram. So I had to pivot and change my social media profile on that. And with the age of AI, a lot of things are fake. There's some amazing videos out there, as you've all seen, and people want to know the story behind the founders. So whenever, so my first client, when I shared my story on funny enough on LinkedIn, they were like, "Oh, can you help me now that you're free? You've left your corporate. Can you help us share that and help out?" This was a law firm, help us grow. So brand is so important. Getting to know particularly in the age of AI, where everything is fake. And they want to know who they're buying from, because ultimately people buy from people, unless you're completely on a digital product base. But in the space that I'm in, particularly as an investor, when someone's trying to sell me their business, or we're having those conversations around deals, they want to know the story behind me, like, what do I bring to the table? What would I do with their baby in the future? Like, what background do I have, particularly in digital transformation and business transformation? So yeah, and I'm telling that side of my story more so on Instagram, because LinkedIn is not really the platform. So you need to find different ways to share
Find your audience, or
yeah,
maybe follow
find your
where
audience.
your
Yeah,
customers and audience are.
not to say that I'm still not on LinkedIn. So, but yeah, you just find different venues, and kudos to to spaces like this as StartSpace, and create different platforms and mediums to be able to share your story, and to collaborate with other founders as well.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I think I think that's dead. Is that better? Okay. There we go. On that as well, I'm someone that is on LinkedIn and Instagram, but not TikTok, because TikTok just doesn't work for me. But it's working out what works for you in terms of what you're saying. But my Instagram, if you went there, I treat that as my shop front. So you get everything right away. You see who I am, you see what I'm doing, and that's how I want to represent myself in the world. But then when you head to my LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn, because that's where I get a lot of my work. And then they come to my Instagram. It's interesting how the conversion works. So LinkedIn for me is, I will do quick hits of what my current work is and where those results are coming from. I think playing into both, you never know who your audience is.
Yeah, thank you.
Funny enough, I have 0 followers on TikTok, but I get the most conversations on TikTok, particularly with the younger generation, because I do also do coaching, and a lot of, particularly in the female space. I want to know how to grow in this world, and they're all so yeah. Even though I don't have any followers, I actually have a lot of viewers. So again, you just experiment. I think it's my experimentation platform.
Yeah. Now moving to maybe hard lessons along your journey. What is a mistake or mistakes that you see early stage founders repeating, or that you learned from yourself? That's a question to all of you, if you have something to say on that.
Just because you're passionate doesn't mean someone's going to buy it. So I have a friend who's trying to come up with a product, and she wants to, because it's a problem that she's facing, but there's no market. It's a saturated, I can't say the product, but it's a saturated market. And it's just because you want it, or that's something that will benefit you, if the market's not there, she'll be spending a lot of resources and time. So so you really need to understand your problem space, and that's where the strategy comes in. Really understand your market and what is your competitive advantage. Particularly now, everyone's got multiple side hustles, a lot of companies emerging. So really understanding that space is really critical.
Thank you.
I think for me, it was being a female in automotive and motorsport space. I mean, it's not hard to assume that wasn't a welcomed space, and it's definitely an area that is growing. But it was a hard lesson in learning on how to present myself. Don't ever act like I can't drive. Here in
Test
fact,
us.
I am a bit of a rev head. But if someone said to me, act like, oh, you can't drive this way or you can't do that, I could be doing a lot of damage for a lot of females in the space. Someone said to me, they're like, oh, would you like to learn how to drive manual in a 911 tomorrow? And I said, I would love to, because I never grew up learning how to drive a manual car. But I'm scared that people might use that online and come for me and say, oh, you're just another girl that doesn't know how to do that. So that's a big hard lesson that I've been sort of dealing with a lot lately. A lot of females are still facing a lot of adversity in the space, and it's an ever-growing thing of just putting your foot down and just proving that you're better than the boys, because we are. Go girls.
Thank you. And Rohini, any mistake or mistakes that you see other founders that you coach in deep technology or yourself experience yourself?
Yeah, first, go girl. I don't drive F1, but I play the game, so anyway, hard lessons, yes, a lot, but something that I've noticed mostly is that we don't think as much as like how important our network is, and we don't think how we can leverage that wider network to benefit the work, because you can have a good product, you can have a good team that's developing a good product, and you can have a good strategy, but at the end, if you don't have people outside your company to help you realize that goal, if you don't have the right person to go and talk to, get an advice, or get them to test your product or get to know about the regulatories or the pathways, then there's a good chance that it might not work. So especially in deep tech and biotech, where in the lab you see, wow, the graph's perfect, fits perfect, and the statistics perfect, you see the results, you see the charts, and everything's great. But then you take it out to an investor and they ask all these questions that you never really think about. They ask, okay, what is the FDA going to think about this? How do you test the safety? How do you even tell me all these things? And then all of a sudden you realize that, oh wait, I haven't thought about that. All I thought was the product and the results. That's not enough. And you shouldn't wait until you have a fully polished product to think that. You gotta think all of that from the very beginning, and you need to have a proper plan, and that plan should incorporate all the steps that would get your product to market every single step. Even if it is way ahead, at least think about it right now and keep it on the shelf, keep it on a document, keep it in your data room, because those informations can help you make decisions along the way, especially if you wanted to pivot or if you wanted to change your direction. Then those information are the ones that you go to for reference. They are going to be your advisors. They're going to be
Do
your
you use a tool for this for recording and retrieving this kind of information?
I keep just primary records, like a data bank, and just Dropbox startup is, I don't know if I can mention brands, but yeah, Dropbox startups or founders space. That's a good place where you can keep all that information, and when you want to share that information, you can share it with people, and you can actually see who's viewing what. If you have a presentation slide, you can see how many seconds people spend on each slide. So that kind of gives you some idea about what are the things people are more interested in, and that kind of statistics.
Yeah, great, thank you. I want to briefly, I'm conscious of time, but I want to touch on the emotional journey also. So entrepreneurship is also an emotional journey. How do you manage challenging times and come out on top and persevere? And that's a question for all three of you.
Yeah, I think I remember talking to you before as well that I told Amira as well that I might not be the best person to talk about because I tend to have a big wall in front of me, brick wall, so that nothing can get to me. That might not be a good strategy for everybody, but that works for me. Like I tend to not get too emotional about decisions because in biotech space, especially neurotech, every day you fail. Every day something goes wrong and every day you see negative results or things that you don't want to know. And once in a blue moon you see something positive. Right? And if you try to emotionally react to every failure or every time you don't see something you were expecting, then it's not healthy. So for me, I've trained to look at both positive and negative the same way. I try not to get sad when I fail. At the same time, I try not to get too excited when things work and look both in the same way so that I'm staying neutral.
Yeah.
But it might not be the same for everyone. Because if you're aware of yourself, if you're mindful of yourself, and if you're an emotional person, then you might need someone to talk to. And in that case, it's very important that you have that accountability partner and you have that person that you can go and talk to and let your emotions out. Someone who can, you know, confidently talk about it and be helpful.
Thank you. Elle?
I mean, I've kind of got the double whammy of that. I'm on social media and a lot of my work is on social media. So I have to put the blinkers on there and not compare myself and get upset if someone else gets a presenting job over myself or someone got invited to do something with an automotive brand and I didn't get that job myself. And then I also have the business side of things where if things aren't working, if the episode didn't get many views, if the numbers aren't clicking, if we didn't sell out of that collection, it's easy to get down. And so when I talk about the personal side of things, for those sort of jobs that are very social media based, it's blinkers on, stay in my own lane, and you really just have to trust the process and that there is a fair share of everything to go around to everyone, and everything will come back around. I'm a big believer in karma as well. And then on the business side of things, if things aren't going well, it's always a lesson. It's always a way to pivot and change something up. When I started Empty Esky in 2020, it was for the bushfires. It was a national program that was initiated to drive traffic to impacted towns from the fires directly or indirectly. And then 3 months later, COVID came around. So starting a tourism campaign where you just quit your job to run that and then tourism gets shut down globally, that was really fun. So it was all about pivoting and going online and trying to support stores online and utilizing the skills that we had. You can always turn something around, turn it into a lesson. You just got to have the mindset and also have the community around you, as you said, if you need to talk about it or share an idea, just the people that you trust. But if it's also someone that you wouldn't take advice from, don't ask them and don't confide in them. They're not going to give you what you need. Look up to the people that you need advice from, and they will always be willing to help as well.
Thank you.
I love physical roller coasters, but I feel like I have an emotional roller coaster every day as an entrepreneur and founder. I hire and fire myself every single day, so it's a lot of fun. People make obviously we have a social media presence, and you always have a positive things. But if someone says it's absolutely bliss all the time, they're lying. It isn't, but it's you feel purposeful anyway. So yeah, it's not an easy journey, but it's a purposeful journey because it's under your terms. So if you make a mistake, you can't blame anyone. You can't blame your staff. You can't blame your bosses. It's all on you. And it's the biggest learning experience I've ever had. You can never get that in book learning. So it's great.
Yeah, and on community, I think that's really one of the core reasons why StartSpace exists is really to provide that space for founders to come together, and it's the number one reason why members join StartSpace. The number one reason is for connections, community, and network. Because otherwise, you're working from your kitchen, the cafe, the bedroom. It's a bit isolating. So yeah, definitely connect with the community and StartSpace and engage and find your tribe. your people. Let's talk about strategy a bit, Amelia. What are some strategies and strategic areas founders should focus on for success? So we spoke about, for instance, strategic partnerships, contracts, etc. Would you like to?
Yeah, so when we spoke, talked about partnerships, and that's really the fastest way to scale. Because if you partner with other organizations, other companies, other startups who already have access to your customer base, you can have multiple revenue streams. And these are some of the things that, again, the big corporates do really well. And, and particularly the smaller space, you only think about your niche and your product, but having those different types of being very creative in the partnership space and being able to work in different ventures and access to more capital and more resources, especially if you're in the early stages, it's a game changer. I would say with strategy, be careful with AI, getting it to write your strategy, because it's always going to be positive, and there are areas you have to say no, and that's one of the things I really consult with my clients about. Yes, you can have a high structure. There's a reason why they pay a lot of money to the big strategy firms, because you have to go through layers and really understand the problem set, really challenge a problem set, understand your the area that you're going to be focusing on, particularly in the tech space. There's a lot of peripherals that a lot of tech startups forget. The processes, the operating model, the people aspect, the ecosystem that you're playing in. It's not just about the app. And I mean, the user experience, the app is critical, but what's the business model going to be? And a lot of the times AI is going to give you a positive outlook, and you do have blinders on that space. So when you have your strategy ready, you have your different partnerships, and you can really, and the other thing I see is around pricing and really undercutting a lot of, particularly in the early stages, people undervalue or give a low price for their products and services. And really think about the overall value you're giving, don't just think of it as a product or a service. Think about the overall problem you're solving and the value that you can bring, and then don't undercut yourself, because it reduces your brand.
I think strategy is such a big area.
We can talk about it for
yeah,
days.
exactly. We can have a whole session about it. I hope we will sometime in the near future. But I do see that often founders do not necessarily have a strategy, especially partnership strategy. I can't stress how instrumental and helpful that can be. But talking strategy in general, okay, have a strategy. What elements specifically should early stage founders specifically be focused on to kind of establish that strategy? Or is there like a resource or a framework that you go by?
There's various frameworks. I think getting your problem statement right, as I said at the beginning, just because you think you're solving a problem, but you haven't tested it with your customer base or your potential customer base, and being ability to have the pivot she was mentioning before, it's a trial and error. And when you do have those partnerships, especially those who have been established and understand that customer base, then you really is a good platform to really test your products and go through like the fail fast concept. So there's different elements of strategy, and depends how deep you want to go to. And it's not something that, in the old days, in the consulting firms, we used to look at strategy for 5 years. In the age of digital and AI, you would be looking at every 6 months, or even faster than that. So how quickly are you adapting and pivoting, looking at your strategy, both short-term and long-term? You need to have both.
Thank you. Anyone else on strategies?
I've just got one thing on that. And you two are completely brilliant women, and I'm sure everyone else is here as well. Something that I've always found a little bit intimidating as a founder and someone that works for myself, I've never really done strategy. I don't sit there, and I've worked with founders and that they want to write out their whole strategy from the get-go and to do any move. And I've kind of always been the person, I think it's evident that I studied online for 8 years because I just preferred to work. I'm like, just do it and work it out along the way. And it's not for everyone, but don't be afraid to do that as well. I completely believe in when I've worked for other people, I'm like, okay, I can see why you've written that out and now we're following it. But you can also, for me, I could spend way too long doing that, and then I've just missed the cycle that I should be working in, and I could have missed the opportunity online because a lot of my work's online. So I think it's just, for me, that personally works. It's not for everyone. I'm sure someone could come into my business, my apparel business, and go, no, we wouldn't buy that because you've got no strategies in place, but it does work for us.
Yeah, and it could also be having some flexibility around the strategies, milestones, etc. So having some structure, but also some
Yeah,
flexibility
because we've got
around that.
goals. We know,
Yeah.
like, you know, no matter what I do, you know, with my podcast, my photography, my label, there are goals there. For me, marketing consultancy is what sort of covers my base bills, right? But it's also something I love, and I love working with other partners. But all those other businesses, we have goals, and we just have to pivot and move and be really fluid with what goes on there.
Thank you. Rowena?
I think it works both ways, yeah. Again, it's entirely up to you, your startup and the work you have to do to see what works for you. You can try this and that and then pivot. What I have to add is to Amelia's point about partnerships. I would recommend, and this is something I try to do myself as well, is that get your partners or potential future partners and stakeholders involved very early, even before you have a fully polished product, and build together so that at the end, when you have a good product, they kind of have that feeling in their head as well that they've supported, they've contributed, so they're more likely to become your investors or partners or stakeholders, kind of feed their ego. And about your point, I've seen a lot of people, a lot of startups that I mentor, that they spend too much time on planning and documents, and they go through them over and over and over again. And at the end, you spend majority of the time planning and not executing. So you gotta find that balance where, yes, it's okay to have a good plan, you can have a good strategy, you know where you're going, but at the same time, you need to actually go and do it. And then see if that works. If that doesn't work, come back and make the changes.
Yeah.
Because execution is where, at the end, things happen.
It's Nike. Just do it.
Yeah. Thank you. It's obviously not a one size fits all, right? It's really about what resonates with you from this. But we'll wrap up the panel conversation formally now. Please help me. A round of applause for our speakers today. Thank you so much. Questions, thoughts from the audience? Yep, I'll give you the mic just so it's recorded also.
Hi, I'm Adam from All In Skills. Bit of a preamble before my question, which is you've spoken about perfection, you've spoken about just doing it, you've spoken about not waiting to get things started, and it made me think that the perfection is the enemy of good. I've worked for 15 years in the Israeli tech space. Israelis are brilliant at doing things on the hoof, at creating, at turning on a sixpence, to use an old British expression. At what point in the startup process do you think you should move from planning to just doing it? When do you stop kind of twiddling your thumbs and trying to get a perfect proposition? And when do you put something out there and then iterate on that?
Thank you. Would anyone like to answer this?
I think it's completely personal. It's entirely on who you are, where your product is, and what you're doing in the space. For me, when I started the podcast, I knew that there was no other female F1 podcast out there. There was one in the States, and I knew, Australian media space, it's very hard to compete with what's going on in the States. So that was fine as a competitor. So I met with my co-host, and we'd met before, and I said, if we're going to do this, we do it right now. So the week after, we booked a photo shoot, and then we booked a studio the week after that. And we had a bottle of wine before we recorded our first episode. We literally just went ahead and did it because we knew otherwise we, as the two individuals that we were, we could have spent way too long just talking about it. Everyone has sat around a table before and gone, oh, we should start a podcast. When have you ever, people actually go and do it? So for me, that's what was important. It was the exact same conversation when it happened with the apparel label. We discussed it and we thought, oh, well, we have to test this right now. Let's just go ahead. reach out to our resources, see who's around us. But yeah, it's an entirely personal experience, which is what you were saying as well.
I think it also depends on the product and industry you're in. I think in a defense space, there has to be a more of a degree of a structure, and you're playing with people's lives. I think it's the same with the medical industry. In other industries, it doesn't matter if it fails, or you might get a bad press, or you might get sued. That's fine. But in some area, you no, because if then it shows that you're paying attention, right? I mean, people are always afraid not to get sued, not to get a cease and desist letter, and all that. That shows you're growing. But I think in some space, some areas like where literally is about life or death, I think you need to have more rigor and process around it. Also, if you're trying to get investment, a lot of obviously venture capitals, private equity firms, if they want to give you funding, they want to see a bit of a structure. As long as even the thought process has been thought out, like being articulate about, again, goes back to the problem solving. If you're clear about the problem, even if you haven't developed the whole, and you're still at a concept phase, but having thought about it more deeply, that's what they need. They want to see that.
Just on that as well, when I started MT Esky, this could be a nice lesson for everyone. We started it just as an Instagram idea, and we just put it out there, and it blew up overnight. It was a viral thing, so we never really had a plan for it, and we just had to keep pivoting, and it just strategies unfolded as we just kept going. But then we spent too long chatting with a government organisation and sharing our plans because they wanted to work with us. Then they went silent, and 12 weeks later they popped up with our product. So they're just taken it from us. And I think that was a classic example of, for us, we spent way too long talking about it and planning it, and then we missed the opportunity. And our program went viral originally because governments have red tape. They're hard to get programs through and get going. We were an online initiative that just went, and we could work with it and be really fluid with it. So, and then we stuffed up because we went, to them and worked with them. So it really is also a timing thing.
Yeah. Rowena, do you have anything to say? Otherwise, we can move on to another question.
I'll quickly add something to that, something I've heard from the Twitter CEO. So what they say about perfection is it's okay to get all the nitty-gritty details about the things you have to do, just limit the number of things you have to do at this point.
That's great advice. And yeah, so it is dependent on the industry, on whether you're seeking investments or other stakeholders in the space, but also dependent on how your brain works. I know an engineer in StartSpace has developed a company from 7 mils to 100 mils. He's an engineer. So what he does is he sets a goal and he literally reverse engineers everything and breaks them down into like almost daily actionable steps or weekly. Works for him. So yeah. You'll see, you understand when you understand the options and yourself, you understand what really works for you. Other questions in the room? Yep. Olivier, I might just get you to pass the mic, please.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Olivier. I do information security advice, and I also develop like a product around that. And to your point, Amelia, before around like being an entrepreneur means you do like a million things, and you have taxes, and you've got sales, and you've got marketing, and you're trying to train yourself and keep up with AI and whatever else. How do you organize your time to try to have the priorities straight? Like, do you book some time for things? Do you jump on everything that moves? How do you go about it?
Time management?
Yeah, time management, priority management with all the conflicting things.
Thank you.
I think each person's different. I'm sure that the other ladies in the panel might have their structure. I've tried to keep a discipline. I also get up at like 5:30, 6 a.m. and I do my exercise and I try and keep a routine and all that. But I think this is where having the right structures and networks as well, because what we're afraid to do sometimes is spend money and think of it, I'm spending a lot of money on this and that. But the biggest thing that we all have equal is time. So think of when you're spending something as investment. So if you can outsource that cost or give it to a bookkeeper or give it to a partner to do, yes, you might be cash flow, you might be going down, but that's an investment in the long term, and your time is the most precious thing. and you have to be pretty ruthless with your time as well. Like as Rowini said, like she just blocks everything that's not going to add value. And each person's going to be different. Their value, like some days I am all over the place, and some days I am okay. I need to focus on what's my go-to-market, what's my growth. In some areas I need to, when I get the feedback, is how do I pivot and do my delivery. So it's different for each person, but don't be afraid to spend money at the beginning. And I think this is where a lot of people fail, because they try and save a lot of money, but they're wasting your time is worth more than any expense you're going to do. And change your mindset from expense to investment, because it's investment for the long term. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And how do you prioritize, I guess, as early stage founder, what you're spending maybe the bigger chunk of your time on, 30%, 20%, 10, 5, etc.?
Well, I'm playing for the long haul, so most of my time is going in the acquisition investment space for me personally. But then obviously when I get a new client, I pivot and I spend more time on delivering that exceptional customer experience. I know Tracy's here and she can talk a lot about customer experience. We work together at Bupa, so it just depends on the phase of the project that you're in. But I think it's whether you're playing the short game or the long game as well. So a lot of my time is around that broader long-term investment.
So again,
anyway,
going to that, let's say 3 year, 6 month, whatever strategy or goal, and then seeing how your time should really be breaking down to meet that North Star or that end goal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any other?
Yeah, maybe we'll take more questions, maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Any other questions, thoughts in the room? Yep, Andrea.
Thanks. I was just going to ask, I guess anybody can take over this question, but at the start, how do you go about acquiring like new leads and clients and things like that if you're kind of getting off the ground?
You've got a few businesses. Do you want to talk about the different types?
I mean, depends what you're doing. For me, when it was reaching out for marketing clients, because I knew that I wanted a consulting side of my business to keep my brain active as well as stay relevant in the space and keep learning and provide input elsewhere, it was reaching out to my network. One of my long-term retainer clients, he was actually the guy that gave me my very first job. I would never have thought of that, to reach out to him, and I bumped into him on LinkedIn. What's the wrong word? What? Reconnected. Sorry, it's not a physical platform. But yeah, reconnected with him on LinkedIn. And so it's really reaching out to your network. That was the best way for me to get new clients. And then when it comes to sort of presenting work as well, for me, getting new clients in that space, it's social media. Again, it's my shop front. People do judge a book by its cover today. It's, yeah. No?
Yeah, another question? Yep. And then I'll come back to you, Russell, in a second.
I'm just a bit curious because all the guests are very beautiful and attractive ladies. And I want to know, like, as females, do you feel like it's easier or harder? Is it an advantage or is it a setback for you to reach out to clients or like potential customers or just investors? Like, is it a good thing or bad thing?
I mean, Amira and I spoke about this. I grew up in a very unconventional environment where my dad was in politics. So from a very young age, I was just left in rooms with very grown-up, important men. And I just had to learn how to talk. But it's a life lesson that I've taken with me, and I absolutely cherish every single day, because I try and never let gender get in the way, especially in my space where gender is a big conversation. I am 6'2", so that does come to its advantage. I can walk in the room and tower over everyone, but that can also look really scary and intimidating at the same time as well. So there is challenges, but being a woman in the space, I always just try and go in with grace. And we all have brains, both genders, and we all deserve equality as well. And it's just knowing that and then not hiding from it as well and just demanding it for me. I just make it happen. I don't let anyone bully me, but also I am very tall, so I can fight you.
It's I know there's a lot of women in science, women in entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of campaigns to reduce inequality, but unfortunately, it's still out there, and we have to accept that. Especially if you're in a boardroom with a lot of white, gray-haired men, they are judging you. They're looking at every single move you make, even a raise of eyebrow or even your changes in facial expressions. They notice all these things because they've dealt with young founders through and through. They know how we feel before we even feel it. And sometimes it can be scary, but it's a trainable skill. Like not showing emotions, the neutral face always helps. So I would recommend, if anyone's going for a big fundraise, if you're going for millions investors, especially in the US, practice your neutral face. I cannot stress how important that is. Don't let them know or read your face. Just be mysterious. And
Love that.
it's always good. And also, yes, being a woman, you're expected to behave in a certain way. You're expected to maintain your physique and appearance. People do judge, unfortunately, so you can't go crazy. You can't have a big belly like old men. Like it's different. I'm giving the straight out here because it's an honest conversation. So
Yeah.
yes, you have to take care of yourself. You have to look after yourself. It's important that you maintain a healthy body and a healthy mind so that you have a clear head and you know what you're doing. You can make good decisions and be strong, and you can put your foot down when you want to.
Thank you.
Just wanted to add sort of one more lesson on that as well. Give them the shock factor. If you're a female and you're speaking to a man that you need investment from or something, or you're working in a corporate environment, they're the CEO, give them the shock factor. Go up and talk to them. 9 times out of 10, they're not expecting it, and treat them like a human because you never know what's going to come from that.
Thank you.
I actually wrote a LinkedIn article 2 weeks back around, because I worked for big tech companies, and in the tech space, it was a lot of women, very few women. I was often the only woman in the room in a senior leadership position. So if you ever have a read about that, and I got a lot of comments on that privately. What's happening now? So in the investment side, I'm trying to do some acquisitions in some of the spaces like plumbing, electrical businesses, very male dominated. And when I do call, I don't get the sexism, but you feel it, like a lot of times it's, but you're not a plumber. I'm like, yes, I know I'm not a plumber, but I'm an investor. I'm a business transformation expert, so I can transform any business. So you do always get that. And I also feel for women of color or of non-white backgrounds. They, especially if your name, I was lucky, Amelia is easy pronounced in Western countries, but some of my friends who had some difficult names had additional prejudice. So it's there. But it's getting better. Particularly, well, I saw it in corporate. I kept encouraging when I was obviously in the space, some of the younger females to go up the ranks. But it's a tough world, and they saw how women at my area were getting treated. So we have to support one another, and particularly males, be a champion of change, because it helps everyone, not just females.
That's great advice. Say men, you get some sexism, but do you also get that from females?
You do, yeah.
Oh yeah, we're the worst.
We don't support each other, I think, because there's so many few positions, especially in corporate. There were so many few positions on the top that women fight for that one role.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take one more minute, one last question. Russell, you had a question you wanted to ask? Yeah.
I've always believed that strategy is the choices you make to position yourself to win. So my question is, with everything else that's going on around, all the interruptions, and Rowena, I heard you say how you block certain things out, what would be the one thing you would say or advise founders and developers of business to say no to more than anything else? Because I spent some time with Peter Drucker some years ago, and he said he wrote extensively on entrepreneurship and innovation, and he said it's what you say no to. And I heard Eleanor, you at the beginning saying I say yes to everything. So I thought I'd just throw to you and say, what is the one thing that you think business founders should say no to more than anything else?
Great question.
One thing that attracted me to to start my company was to be able to say, to do the projects that I wanted to do and work with the businesses that I wanted to do. You don't get that luxury when you're in corporate. If you get a client and they don't sit well in your area of purpose, then you're stuck. But when you're a solopreneur, you get to choose your projects, and sometimes you get offered a lot of money by clients who don't align with your strategy or your value proposition or your brand, and you need to say no to that because it does hurt you, not just in the short term but in the long term as well. Like sometimes it is hard to say no to things or partnerships or clients, but it's so critical for your brand as well and your strategy, and just to be focused, because it's easy, especially in the age of AI and all these things happening, just get diverted to different areas. Limit the noise and be focused. That would be my suggestion.
My one is breaking it into categories. So I do say yes to all the opportunities, but it has to fit into a list of requirements that are important to me. Is it going to move the dial in my career? Does it make me happy? I think that's so important. And is there financial benefit or career gain right now or in the future, or it's going to lead me to someone else? So if it's not in at least over 50% of that, it's an absolute no. If it's just for the money, unless I was in a real struggle position, and we definitely get there, I do say no a fair bit. At the end of the day, my happiness is so important, and I hear people talking about oh, my business is 7 figures, 8 figures, whatever it is, and I'm like, that's not the most important thing to me at the moment. So yeah, I do say no a lot as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it comes down to mission and purpose in the value statement. That could be your company or yourself itself. And if that doesn't fit within the mission, no for me. Sometimes it might be a really good idea, and in that case, I would try to link them with someone I know or that might be more suitable than myself. And otherwise, no, because time is important.
Thank you. That's it for Q&As. One last thing from me, very quick round. What is one last advice you'd like to leave every founder in the room with? 30 seconds or less.
Think about the future. Like I'm a futuristic person, so I always think what's going to happen in the next 20 to 50 years, and I'm building my products to that future because I want my companies, my organizations to last that long. And that time is the people who are going to use my product, and I'm going to help build that future.
Thank you. Elle?
I think my one thing is embrace fluidity. Let things go. Don't think you have to follow that exact strategy or do exactly what other founders are doing. Do what feels great to you and what is helping you move along. And if you have to pivot, it's okay. Sometimes pivoting is the absolute best thing you could ever do.
Thank you. Amelia?
Progress beats perfection every time.
Great. Thank you. Round of applause. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in. I'd like to invite everyone, please take 1 minute to scan the QR code and give us your feedback on the session. But thanks so much for coming in. We'll have some time for, if you want to come up, just speak with the speakers or connect with each other, you're more than welcome to. But round of applause for you for coming in today also. Yes. Thank you so much, guys.